It is with sadness that all of us have learned that an American soldier, a Navy SEAL, has been killed. The details are almost non-existent. We don't know the gentleman's name. We don't know the exact circumstances under which he died. It was in Iraq. American advisors were with Kurdish fighters who are fighting ISIS. And the news reports, and this is where it gets a little confusing, the news reports said that the Americans were 2 miles behind the line. So they should have been far away from the fighting. But then they said that there was an intense firefight with ISIS, who kept on sending in suicide bombers. There was heavy machine gun fire, and the American was killed by light machine gun fire, probably an AK-47. Light machine gun fire means that they were at close range. So again, just trying to piece together what they're saying, it appears possible that Kurdish forces were overrun by ISIS forces. About 20 Navy SEALs then engaged. About an hour after the fight began, 20 Navy SEALs began to engage ISIS, and I won't quote the exact quote, pounding the expletive out of ISIS, and dozens of ISIS terrorists were killed. Tragically, one American Navy SEAL was killed. This is all we know. I want to talk about what we're facing here for just a moment. In Islamic ideology, Islamic theology, which ISIS holds to, there is a benefit to them dying. Now, it's important to us when we fight an enemy that we know our enemy. If you want to understand what you're fighting in communism, it would do little good to have no idea what communist ideology was all about. And after the US and the Allies defeated Germany, they went on a Nazi they called it the denazification of Germany, where they actually did psychological brainwashing, or brain cleansing would be a better way to put it, to denazify. Part of what they did was they took the surviving civilians of Germany and marched them through concentration camps. You can see video footage of German citizens walking in, smiling and laughing, and then walking out crying and sick to their stomach. They were bringing the Germans face to face with the fruit of the ideology of Nazism, to purge it from Germany. Because the Americans knew that this was an ideology. They weren't just fighting Hitler and the Third Reich. It was an ideology about German supremacy, the master race. There were elements of thought that had to be combated. It became a crime to show the swastika. I don't know if it was a crime or not, but people stopped naming their children Adolf. It was a crime to deny that the Holocaust happened. Okay? Because the Allies knew that they were dealing with an ideology that infected the soul so deeply that people were willing to kill and commit horrible acts of butchery against innocent people like the Jews, Gypsies, Christians, especially the Jews. So we have to learn from history, and we have to learn the fundamental principle to know your enemy. Muslims who die fighting the enemy, according to Islamic theology, that when the first drop of their blood is shed, their sins are forgiven. If they die when they stand before God, their blood begins to flow again. It's the color of blood, but it's the smell of musk, a sexual aphrodisiac. That's what we're dealing with. When you deal with a communist insurgency, a communist might be willing to die, but he doesn't have a death wish usually. He doesn't want to die because he doesn't believe in life after death. He's an atheist. He doesn't have a reward waiting for him. He's got the decay of his body. He's returning to the dust. But a Muslim sees himself marrying 72 wide-eyed virgins. He sees his blood becoming an aphrodisiac fragrance to seduce the virgins in heaven. That's what we're fighting against. And we need to be able and willing to kill them, to destroy them. But beyond that, we are going to have to deal with the ideology, just like the Allies did with the denazification of Germany. We're going to have to deal with the ideology. Mr. Muslim family, do you really believe Muhammad was made of pure light? Really? Did you know Muhammad had sex slaves? And he distributed women as sex slaves to his men and gave them the rules under which they could rape women? You really believe that is what God wants? I'll tell you this before I leave this subject and take a quick break. One of the things that we have to come to terms with and learn to speak about is the puniness of the God of Islam, the weakness of the God of Islam. He is so weak that he requires the steel blade of man to ensure that he is worshipped properly. Think about it. The understanding of the Judeo-Christian God is that he loves us, he gives us free will. If we choose to turn our backs upon him, we can go to hell. If we choose to serve him, we can be forgiven. We stumble, we fall, we get up, we ask forgiveness, we go on. Some people leave the faith, some come back. The Muslim God, their understanding of God, the theology of their God is so puny, he is so puny, so weak, that he requires the steel blade of man to ensure that he is worshipped the way he wants. And he keeps a blade over the neck of the Muslim so that if they decide, you know, I don't think I want this, I think I want to leave, that they're afraid for their lives because it's a crime, it's a capital crime, okay? Punished by death, that's what a capital crime is, to leave Islam. That's how weak, that's how puny the Muslim God is. And we have, if we're going to fight our enemy, if we're going to win the long, long battle of not just defeating Islamic terrorism, but defeating an ideology that spawns this type of behavior, we've got to know our enemy. And we have to be willing to run right at the lies that these young men are being taught that propel them to commit acts of barbaric terrorism. I'll be right back.